How to play guitar with missing or compromised fingers. So I was on Reddit recently and I saw this post on r/guitar of this guy asking how much his missing digits might impede his progress. His post went kind of viral, so he got a lot of good answers in the comments, but it got me thinking, I know more about this subject than anyone, so I thought I would share the things that helped me out on my journey as a phalangeally deficient guitarist. My first piece of advice is perhaps the most obvious. It's recognizing that playing the guitar is hard for everyone. This is a homunculus. More specifically, it's the cortical motor homunculus, which is meant to visualize the proportional brain power necessary to move certain body parts. Just look at those hands.
She had man hands.
Yeah, that's right. Manual and finger dexterity is incredibly energetically taxing. It's in every guitarist's best interest to play efficiently. You know, there's a reason there's a ton of memes out there lampooning the absurdity of jazz guitar chords. It's because they're so situational and so difficult to learn that playing them outside of the proper context is just crazy and baffling. Really, at the end of the day, most guitarists do not need all four functioning fingers to play the instrument well. And I'm living proof. Not to say I'm like the Polyphia kid or something. I don't have enough e-boy tats yet. But yeah, I've found that most guitarists, including many of the all-time greats, do a lot less with the guitar rather than more. My favorite guitarist right now is Scott Thurston, who played for Iggy Pop in the 80s. I'd go as far as to say that he's a genius if his unique sense of phrasing and melody is anything to go by. He's an incredibly precise technical player, a master of technique, and the best part is, from all of the songs of his that I've played, I've discovered that they're all, dare I say, wheelchair accessible. Anyway, this is all just a way of saying it's eminently possible to play guitar with less fingers. Really, the only thing you'll be encountering with any sort of regularity that requires 4 fingers of you is the major bar chord. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. You don't really need 4 fingers for it. We'll get to that. Ironically, it's the stuff that gets touted as incredibly simple that is deceptively complex for me. You know, most people learn Wonderwall as one of their first songs. I've been playing guitar for almost a decade now, and I still can't crack the code on that thing. To this day, it is the only song I have encountered that requires you to have 4 functioning fingers throughout the entirety of the song. And that kind of leads me to my next point, which is recognizing your limitations and making the proper adaptations. You know, I adapted to playing Wonderwall by not learning it. Sometimes it really is just that simple. You know, no one wants to be the guy who plays Wonderwall at the party, right? That being said, if I absolutely wanted to learn Wonderwall, I would probably experiment with a capo to kind of free up my index finger from the bar chords in that song. Maybe I would even play with an open suspended fourth tuning. That song is kind of built on suspended fourth chords, so I think having the whole instrument tuned to a suspended fourth would probably make it a lot easier. Open tunings in general are just a godsend. For some reason, whenever I see people recommend that disabled guitarists play with open tunings, they always say like, oh, play with an open tuning and use a slide. I don't know what a slide has to do with it. I swear there's like a blues musician recruitment drive happening or something. Like all of you guys are just like setting up tables at local high schools right next to the Marine and you're like, we need more blues players, we need more slide guitar. I'm just joking, I love y'all. Let's listen to some Howlin' Wolf together, okay? Hey, if you're enjoying the video so far, my name is Luke Exuberance, the public universal bandmate, which means if you're new here, you just joined my band. I would really appreciate if you left a like if you're liking the video. And hey, if you really want to show your loyalty to the band, you can always subscribe down below. Thanks for tagging along on today's rehearsal. Let's get back to it. You know, I alluded to the difficulty of playing the major bar chord just a second ago. If for some reason you absolutely need a fully voiced bar chord, an open tuning will get the job done. You can play any major chord with 1 finger with an open tuning. Open G is probably the most intuitive tuning for standard gauge strings. Me personally, I like having open tunings on my acoustic guitar. It's really great in that context. Country and folk and blues and mopey varieties of indie tend to use a lot of fully voiced bar chords on an acoustic guitar. Now, if you are just starting out or you're still in that questioning phase where you're like, oh, I really want to play guitar, but I don't know if I can with my condition, first of all, I sympathize. But before diving in, I would really encourage you to think about what hand would actually be better for fretting. I have polysyndactyly on both hands. Basically, I was growing extra finger bones out of my hands in utero. A bizarre consequence of this is that on my left hand, my middle and ring fingers are fused with bone. My ring finger is basically pure bone. There are no joints whatsoever. It doesn't move. It is perpetually extended. My middle finger is bent 90 degrees on that hand, and it doesn't really move either. At least I can't extend it straight. My index finger and my pinky, meanwhile, are completely functional. On my right hand, I can better articulate all my fingers, although only my index finger can be extended completely straight. On this hand, it's actually my pinky that's bent 90 degrees, and my other two fingers both have a permanent crook in them. Also, my pinky and ring finger on this hand are both really sensitive from the scar tissue caused by my surgeries. So all in all, it was a wash coming down to which hand I want to play with. On the one hand, no pun intended, I have a more articulate right hand, but on the other, I have a less articulate, although more robust left hand. And what it ultimately came down to was my extended ring finger on my left hand would get in the way of my strumming. So I decided I would just play right hand. It was easier that way too because my first guitar was a right-handed acoustic guitar that my mom handed down to me. For you, it might not be a wash though, you know? Maybe you have a fully functional right hand and it's really clear that you should just flip that sucker upside down and shred it Hendrix style. Just a question to ask yourself. Now, if you're like me and you have some sensitive scar tissue or your fingers were amputated and you have bone-on-skin contact happening, you might benefit from gluing some thimbles to some leather like Tony Iommi did and having some finger armor. Speaking of Tony Iommi, study the greats. You know, it's him and Django Reinhardt who are the icons of the disabled guitar player community. People invoke their names in a, oh, look what they did despite their injuries kind of way, which is legit, you know. Django Reinhardt, this Belgian-French Romani guy, almost died when his caravan caught fire in the middle of the night, lost the ability to play with his pinky and ring finger, and became a forerunner of lead guitar as we currently understand it in the gypsy jazz scene of France at the time. Tony Iommi lost the tips of his fingers in an industrial accident and became a founder of heavy metal after the fact. It's all very impressive in the abstract. But I encourage you to go deeper than that. You know, listen to the music, pull up the tabs on Songster, and just kind of look at the musicianship before you. I think people tend to point to these guys because of Django Reinhardt's flashy runs and Tony Iommi's face-melting guitar solos, but it's a lot deeper than that. These guys were classy. They were tasteful. Minor Swing is just an A minor triad played note by note. And the National Acrobat, oh my god, don't even get me started on that. I play that riff every time I pick up a guitar. The part where another guitar comes in and doubles the riff in thirds, it's pure magic. And don't even think it's just these guys. Like, I know the guy from The Kills crushed his ring finger in a car door, and he's been rocking out ever since. So don't just go thinking that we're only represented in jazz and heavy metal, you know? And of course, most importantly, follow the lead of any guitarist who inspires your passion for music at all. My next tip for anyone trying to play guitar without full manual capacity is to simplify your chords. This gets back to what I was saying earlier about how you don't really need all four fingers for a bar chord. I'm sort of lucky that my hand is kind of shaped like a bar chord, but I can't use the ring finger, so I invariably end up playing major seventh chords. Or I just mute the string that the ring finger would normally go on altogether. And it's always the octave that's played on that string, so it's like the most redundant note in the chord, so it doesn't really matter that it's not there. I remember it took me a few years before I even learned I could do that, so don't get discouraged if you can't do something right away. You may get lucky like me and stumble across a hack like that. If not, you can always capture the essence of a chord by playing its triad. Something about guitar pedagogy that really frustrated me when I was starting out was this notion that you start with the open chords, then you learn the dreaded F chord, and now you know bar chords, and now you know all the chords, and you're a music theory genius, and you're a millionaire with a pool and a mansion and a Lamborghini, and I did not have the language to articulate this at the time, but really the fundamentals are kind of being skipped there. At the end of the day, every chord is built on the triad, the root, the third, and the fifth. That's 3 notes, and you can play every variation of that with 2 fingers. Actually, you can play a major chord with 1 finger if you just bar the D, G, and B strings. Unless you're playing like Steely Dan or something, I find that it's really rare to actually need bar chords in a typical rock arrangement. And even if you do, I find that you can always hone in on the correct triad that really conveys the essence or the soul of the chord. Just for example, when I was learning the outro to Stairway to Heaven, I had to ask myself, what's the least I can do here to convey the most? Is it just power chords like this? I realized I didn't even say anything about the power chord. Power chord is a disabled guitarist's best friend. I mean, I think it's every guitarist's best friend, but us especially, okay? Yeah, my first year of playing guitar was pure power chords, a lot of punk, as you might imagine. Is it the high notes of the chord like this? Or is it this classic little major triad that I showed you earlier? These are the kind of questions that get you thinking about arrangement. They get you thinking like a musician. And I think it's actually one of the hidden benefits to being a seemingly disadvantaged guitarist. There's a million billion purists out there who are going to tell you that that upper register version is wrong. But if you were doing like a Gang of Four style post-punk cover of Stairway to Heaven, then that would be totally acceptable. The cool thing about music, and really all art, is that it's infinitely accommodating. You can't really be wrong. Every standard can be negotiated with. Anyway, don't get down on yourself if you can't do the finger gymnastics necessary to play a major 9th chord. There are always easier ways to play it. Chords are easy, don't sweat it. I know I'm talking a lot about like music theory and getting really technical here. This is definitely one of those times where a little music theory goes a long way, but you don't have to go to like Juilliard or something. Just learn the notes on the fretboard and learn how a chord is built, and you will be smooth sailing. And here we are at the end. My final piece of advice could actually go for any guitarist, and that's have fun with it. I know. I just implored you to memorize the entire fretboard, but really, you're not going to practice if it's not fun. Follow your heart. Go where the music takes you, and you will inevitably surprise yourself. You know, I don't think I would have broke out of my little punk rock power chord cocoon if it hadn't been for the song Every You, Every Me by Placebo. I really wanted to learn that song, and I was filled with so much doubt. I was like, oh my god, this chord progression is so difficult. But I loved that song so much, and I wanted it bad enough that I persisted, and the few hours that it took to train my fingers to go where they needed to go on the fretboard all paid off. So yeah, if I had to summarize all of this, I would say don't get discouraged, recognize your limitations, but don't let them define you, take inspiration from the greats, don't be afraid to simplify your playing, and most importantly, have fun. With that, I've been Luke Exuberance, the public universal bandmate. If you liked the video, let me know by leaving a like down below, maybe even subscribe, and I'll catch you at the next band practice. Peace.